Hello and welcome to Good Evening Britain, a Force for Good's weekly show coming to you live from our studios here in the heart of the great British city of Glasgow with me, your host, Alistair McConnachie. We're broadcasting on all our digital platforms throughout the United Kingdom and across the world. We're bringing you quality pro-UK comment and analysis every Wednesday from 7 until 8 p.m. on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, and on TikTok. Ladies and gentlemen, please send us your greetings. Please tell us where you are viewing from and send us your comments and your questions on this lovely August evening here in our wonderful United Kingdom. And what a show we've got for you. We have a fantastic guest coming up at 7:30. It's the one and only Niall Fraser. And if you have been on Twitter this week, you will know that Niall has made himself quite famous because it was Niall who took up the advice of Humza Yousaf. If you recall, Humza Yousaf was telling everybody that if you encounter bigots, you should tell them to F the proverbial off. And so considering that Humza Yousaf has made himself well known for being somewhat bigoted, Niall thought he would take him up on the opportunity, and he went along to Humza Yousaf's Fringe event where he was being interviewed by somebody at the Fringe, and Niall gave him a piece of his mind, and we've got that little video coming up, and we'll be speaking to Niall about his thought processes there and what he thought that he would accomplish from it and what drove him to do it. So that's going to be very interesting, talking to the pro-UK Unionist activist Niall Fraser at 7:30. Now, if you're on TikTok, folks, you won't see that interview. You'll just see me looking at the screen, listening to Niall and occasionally asking him questions. If you want to see that interview, then go to youtube.com/UK A Force for Good, where we are currently broadcasting also. So great show tonight, folks. Hope you are doing well. Let's say hello to some people before we get into the meat and potatoes of the show. Derek says, good evening. Derek's the first in, wishing his best to the AFFG family. I hope everyone is doing great. And Derek wants to congratulate the women's English football team for their great results today. Apparently, women are doing quite well in that particular field. If you are a football fan, I wonder what's happened to the Scottish women's football team. You never hear about them, but I presume there is some. They're probably as good as the Scottish men's football team. Visuals says Britain forever from Scotland, and Debbie, third in this night, says good evening all, and hey to Melissa and D Stanners from Kilsyth, and to Harry. Always nice to see Harry, wishing the best to AFFG and Unionists alike. How are you all on this sunny August day? Very often get good weather in August, you know, and sometimes latterly in September. Hello to Stuart from Elgin, and to Catherine, and to Alan, and to Adam. Lots of good names that we recognise each week. Folks, if you haven't sent in a comment and you're watching, please do so. We'll read it out, and we'll definitely appreciate your comments and your questions. What's on your mind? Today has been the day when the GERS figures were announced. Now, the GERS figures are not the latest signings for Rangers, as I always used to imagine they were. Apparently, they're actually the government by which they mean the SNP administration, but they like to give themselves haughty titles. So it's called the Government Expenditure and Revenue. Government Expenditure and Revenue. What's the S for then? Oh, of course, Scotland. The Government Expenditure and Revenue Scotland figures. Because it's the law in Scotland that if you have a government agency, you have to put the word Scotland after it. Or if you have a Scottish charity, you've got to stick the word Scotland after it. Or even if you just like make a comment, you have to stick the word Scotland after it. Well, that's not quite the law yet, but we're heading that way. So it's the Government Expenditure and Revenue Scotland figures, which interestingly enough are produced by the British civil servants who work for the SNP administration. And so you could say it was SNP figures actually. So the SNP can't gainsay them. They can't make up these figures and go, oh no, that's Westminster lying. No, it's actually their own figures that they publish. And so the best that they can do is pretend that they're forced to make certain calculations which apparently are not really correct if they were not forced to make those calculations in such a way they would actually be better for them, etc., etc. You know, they get out of it in all sorts of ways, because one of the things that they are allowed to do is to essentially blame everything on Westminster. And even if their party collapses, they can blame that on Westminster, because a guy today in the Times, a former MSP, never heard of him. So that's how much impact he made when he was an MSP. He claims that the British Secret Service infiltrated, or to use his phrase, penetrated the SNP at the very top levels and have consequently led to the SNP's problems today. Okay, so even when the SNP can't hold a party together, it's either Westminster's fault or Whitehall's fault or the British Civil Service or the British Secret Service or even James Bond's fault himself. He was probably up there doing something with Miss Moneypenny, and they haven't been caught yet. So ridiculous, right? Ridiculous. So get back to the GERS figures, and I don't want to like bore you too much with the GERS figures, because these are the kind of figures that some people love but other people are like whatever, and I'm very much of the whatever, but I know that they're important. Apparently the public spending in Scotland topped 106 billion last year. Goodness knows what it got spent on, which was 19.1 billion more than Scotland raised in taxes last year. And so what that means is there's a deficit. And the great thing about deficits in the United Kingdom is that the British taxpayer will pay for it. Okay, so you can have a deficit in Scotland, but the British taxpayer will make sure that you're going to be okay. So that's one of the great elements of the Union. It really is the greatest insurance policy you can ever have, because at the end of the day, the British Central Bank, its pockets are limitless. Politicians will tell you that the pockets aren't limitless, but they actually are limitless, and the British Central Bank can create money out of nothing and can fill that gap when it needs to fill that gap. And so that's the good thing. It's like the British Treasury will always bail Scotland out. That's the insurance that we have within the Union. And you know, even if there was no deficit, it would still be a good thing, because it would show the extent to which the Union is working. So either way, we can make an argument as Unionists that the British state is an insurance policy for every single part of the United Kingdom. And apparently the report I'm quoting here from from it. The report said that if North Sea revenue was not included, then the deficit would have been 28.5 billion, meaning that the oil and gas sector is a major boost to Scotland's finances. And when you see that, you really get angry the extent to which the SNP and the Greens want to destroy this amazing resource that we have around the Scottish coast, known as oil and gas. It really makes one's blood boil that the SNP and Greens would try to destroy this Scottish resource, especially when it contributes so much to the public purse. It's beyond comprehension that they would do this, and that people would at the same time vote for them to do this. Incredible. The Scottish Secretary said, quote, the Scottish government's own figures show yet again how people in Scotland benefit hugely from being part of a strong, united kingdom. Scotland's deficit is more than 19 billion, even in a year of exceptional North Sea revenues. Without oil and gas, that figure soars to more than 28 billion, which was what I just said. And this means people in Scotland benefit to the tune of £1,521 per person, thanks to higher levels of public spending. Well, that's one way of putting it, isn't it? They call that the union dividend. However, unless I'm getting a cheque for £1,521, I'm not really seeing any personal benefit to it, but I have to presume in some kind of abstract way out there, there's a value of £1,521 floating around that says, Alistair, I'm here just for you. Please do appreciate this £1,521, even though I'm not going to pay it into your bank account, even though you're not actually going to be able to use it, and even though your council tax is going to get put up, and even though your gas and electricity bills are 4 times what they were last year. But anyway, it's still an argument you could use, I suppose. £1,521 per person. Yeah, okay, so I think that's everything I want to say about GERS, unless anybody has got any other comments that they want to make. The point is that the takeaway from GERS is that the British state and Scotland's membership of the United Kingdom is a fantastic insurance policy to ensure that when taxes fall short, we will still nevertheless get our sufficient money from pooling and sharing our resources. Fantastic. Alan says the hard of thinking are going mental about the GERS figures as usual. They do every year. They have a meltdown because they say that the figures are not calculated in the way that they would prefer. Talking about figures not calculated in the way that they would prefer, the latest crazy idea of the ever ingenious Scottish Nationalist movement is this October to get 77,000 people to link hands between Glasgow and Edinburgh along the side of the Union Canal, which links Glasgow and Edinburgh. And here, I don't know if these two ladies there are the organisers of it. Let's just presume that they are, but this is a photograph that the National used last night. People from as far afield as France, Sweden, Canada, the US and Australia have pledged to travel to Scotland for the event. And the major milestone in quest to create massive pro-yes human chain. Apparently they've got 15,000 people have signed up to their website, And we put in a wee comment there at the bottom saying, this could be one of the greatest things that never happens, ever. Okay, and the reason why we know that's not going to happen is because they think, they worked it out and it goes, oh, how many people do we need? 77,000 we need to link hands on that Union Canal. Well, I don't know if you've ever been on the Union Canal, but if you try walking 77,000 people down the pathway in order that one can stop, then the next one can stop, link hands, and the next stop, you know, that's literally going to take you probably about 4 years to manage that. If you then try to say, well, no, what we'll do is we'll get 77,000 people and we'll all come in different cars and buses and we'll all park, like, what's the nearest you can get to the Union Canal, maybe about a mile and a half away, and then we'll all trudge over Farmer Brown's fields because he's not going to mind, and then we'll all get to the Union Canal, and as far as that barbed wire there, and that bull in that field, and that like half acre of thistles and nettles and whin bushes that we've got to struggle through before we get to the canal. Don't worry about all of that. We'll just manage it somehow. So, in other words, even if they could get 77,000 people, logistically, you couldn't achieve that. But why are they imagining that they could even get 77,000? And the reason they're imagining that they could is because they, in their dreams, imagine that previously they've been getting things like 100,000 or 250,000 people at their marches. But of course, they're not getting anything close to that. If they'd listened to A Force for Good, we'd be telling them exactly how many people they're getting at their marches. For example, back in 2019, on the 5th of October, Joanne Cherry was telling everybody that they got 250,000, which is to say 250,000. No, they didn't. We counted them and they got 11,286. And we've got an article, Fantasy Figures Revealed, which you'll find in the threads there, that detail every single march that we've ever counted, which is to say them all, apart from the first two, and revealing the true figures at them. So, you know, they live in this fantasy land where, 77,000 people, that'll be easy. No, mate, it's not going to be easy. If you get enough people to get you out of the car park in Falkirk, I would be amazed, right? Anyway, all will be revealed in October. And this reminds us of their classic attempt at that event in Edinburgh on the 5th of October 2019 to create the world's largest human saltire. And that fell flat in his face as well. There you can see a picture of the world's largest human saltire. And they only managed to get people into that field because they said there was a person selling Greggs in the middle of that crowd there, right? Free sausage rolls. That's the only reason they managed to even get people into that field. And that's why there's so many people in the centre there. They're all looking for their free sausage roll. Okay. All right, to British Legends, how you doing? Hope you're enjoying the show. Alan says the SNP supporters are blind to the GERS figures as they go against everything the SNP say. Absolutely. Folks, just to remind you, in 10 minutes we have got our guest coming up, who is going to be the wonderful Niall Fraser, the activist who had a few choice words for Humza Yousaf on Friday at the Fringe Show. We'll be talking to him about all of that and about his point of view. AB Trains says, I've subscribed to Silver Fox Hot Takes. I'm afraid we haven't heard of this person. Makes great content about Scotland and the SNP Greens Albert. Very interesting. Worth a watch. Maybe he could appear as a guest one day. Certainly he could possibly appear as a guest. We will check him out after the show. AB Trains, thank you for bringing this person to our attention. Stuart has a thought there about the penetration that's been occurring in Holyrood, and worries the extent to which MSPs may have been penetrated. Christopher says, They are inveterate fantasists. I saw some academic by the name of Murphy, we know to whom you refer, or some such name, pontificating on the GERS figures. Well, he loves to pontificate, that Murphy character. As Alan reminds us, it was a 19.1 billion difference between taxation raised and the cost of the public purse. 106.6 billion cost of the public purse. I'd like to know what they spend that on, quite frankly, considering that they're not needing to spend it on the military, because that's British taxpayers, right? They're not needing to spend it on roads, because they do nothing with the roads. It's not like they're building the A9, which they should be doing. So I guess that's just paying for the salaries for many of the people who work in the council buildings. They're on very good salaries. Yes, Niall Fraser of the Humza Gets Telt fame is our guest later tonight, coming up in 8 minutes. Now, what's also coming up is our On This Day in British History, and our prize. After we've gone through this day in British history, we'll ask a question, and the prize is this nice little keyring here, which has got 2 Union Jacks hanging from it, along with, we're going to throw in a Lincoln Tea and Coffee Royal Air Force Typhoon coffee bag, which I'm told is very good. So what happened on this day in British history? Well, today is what we call the National Day of the sovereign base areas of Akrotiri and Dhekelia. Now, these are areas in Cyprus which belong to the United Kingdom, because Cyprus has a very interesting and quite violent history, actually, because it's always been populated by Greek people and by people descended also from Turkey. And there's been a long-standing dispute about who the island actually is owned by, as it were, whether it's Greece or Turkey. And that's led to serious fault lines within the island itself. And it became British territory as part of the British Empire back in 1878, and Britain took it over completely in 1914, because prior to that it had remained sort of in law. Even though Britain was administering it, it sort of remained in law still Turkish as part of the Ottoman Empire. But in 1914 it became a fully British base, and excellent as far as the British were concerned for the colonial routes into the Middle East. And it's still a very vital island, sitting where it does in the Mediterranean, along with Gibraltar. And Britain has been able to keep both of those areas, parts of both of those areas, for the British military. And that has had a hugely beneficial, if you want to call it that, strategic effect for the British military, especially the Royal Air Force and the Navy in the operations around the Mediterranean. And so, however, as the 20th century rode on, by the time of 1960, Britain gave up that territory under what's called the Zurich and London Agreement, and it attained what might be called independence, but it was still very much an island that was disputed between Greece and Turkey. And in 1974, Greece invaded Cyprus, and in response, Turkey invaded Cyprus. And ever since then, there's been a United Nations buffer zone between the northern Turkish area and the southern Greek area, with the little enclaves of Akrotiri and Dhekelia belonging still to the United Kingdom. And I'll just bring up the picture there of the Cyprus map, and I'll show you where these little enclaves are. As you can see from this picture, which, there we go, that grey line through the middle is the UN buffer zone separating the Turkish north from the Greek south. And in law, there's actually one government for it all, but it's generally kind of disputed. In other words, it's not like it's a de jure government for the whole island, but not really de facto. De facto, it's still very much disputed. And those shaded areas there at the very bottom is the Akrotiri sovereign base area, and up there at the UN buffer zone towards the north is the Dhekelia sovereign base area. And these areas are used also by the Red Arrows to practice their summer flights in, because you can always be guaranteed the good weather in that particular area. So it was on this day, the 16th of August in 1960, that that Cyprus gained separated from Britain, and these separate areas came into their own as British overseas territories. So today was the day, we call it the national day for these areas, for the sovereign base areas. And there's a picture of the Red Arrows flying over. That looks like Akrotiri, but I could be wrong. Certainly part of Cyprus anyway. Cool. So in 2 minutes we have got our guest coming up, who is going to be Niall Fraser. Stephen says, GERS shows that the UK is a mutually beneficial union. Absolutely. And they always have a meltdown, as James says. They always have a meltdown about the GERS figures. Alan Jack says the AUOB page are struggling with the project of getting everybody to line up along the Union Canal. Well, it keeps them busy, because who knows what else they would do if they actually didn't have something like that to occupy their minds with. They might actually get up to some real trouble. I just hope nobody falls into the Union Canal or something like that. I can see that happening if they're not careful. Certainly if there's a 77,000 people there and they're all pushing along the yard-wide little lane that runs along the side of the Union Canal, I can imagine tempers will fray and the bodies might fall. Fingers crossed that doesn't happen, of course. Are there 77,000 villages in Scotland a sufficiency of village idiots? There's not even that. If they get 77 people, if they get 770, they'd actually be doing extremely well. That would still be a massive logistic exercise, getting folk along the Union Canal, though. But if they have the dogs as well, they could double it. Now, folks, the question that I'm going to ask just before I bring Niall on, for your Royal Air Force coffee and for your fantastic little keyring here. And if you haven't entered this competition before, all you need to do is send your answer to contact@aforceforgood.uk. And if you've never done it before, you're in with a good chance of winning. So the question is, the sovereign base areas of Akrotiri and Dhekelia are part of which Mediterranean island? Okay, the sovereign base areas of Akrotiri and Dhekelia are part of which Mediterranean island? Send your answers, folks, to contact@aforceforgood.uk. Now, please welcome, folks, our guest, the one and only Niall Fraser.
Hello, Alistair. How are you doing?
I'm well. Good stuff. You are fresh from the fight, it could be said, of your amazing activism last Friday. And for folk who don't know, I'll just quickly give a debrief, as they say. Basically what it was Humza Yousaf was being interviewed by Ian Dale, and tickets were sold at the auditorium in the Edinburgh International Conference Centre. So you bought a ticket, you went along, and it was a few days after Humza Yousaf had very foolishly, actually, been in an interview. It might even have been in the Fringe or elsewhere, I don't know where, but he had, because he loves talking about himself and he loves talking about his race as well, which is a strange fixation that he's got. But he had said that basically bigoted people should be told to F off, and he had used the F word in full. And, you know, people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones, because it's very, very easy to portray Humza as a bigot. After all, he has been on, for those who don't know, which is nobody actually, because everybody knows, he is very famous for having been angry about all the white people in Scotland in positions of power. And there's a very famous video that has literally millions of views of him going through all the obscure positions in Scotland. And apparently they're all white people in these positions of power, which is very unusual in a country that's at least 95% white.
Yes, very unusual indeed.
And also, considering to get into a position of power like that, you generally have to be kind of older as well. You have to have had a career as well, which means that means that a lot of recent immigrants to Scotland wouldn't qualify anyway, because they're not old enough, or their career path hasn't gone on long enough for them to be in such a position. So very absurd, kind of bigoted point of view. Anyway, you gave him a taste of your medicine, and let's just play the video so folk can know what you said. Now, we don't usually swear on A Force for Good, but in this case we'll just play the video, which has got over 500,000 views on your Twitter account.
Twitter alone, yeah, 500,000 on Twitter alone.
On Twitter alone.
Crazy.
Let's play the video.
By who? Oh, by usually, please don't take offence here, but usually by middle-aged, conservative white men.
Excuse me, Humza, a few days ago you said we have to call out bigots and say F you. Didn't you not? Your white speech was the most bigoted thing Scotland has ever heard. So on behalf of Scotland, fuck you. You're a pestilence on the land. You've thrown women and children under the bus. You're despicable. You should be behind bars.
There's good people here who paid money to listen to the show.
So did we.
I don't need to heckle, frankly, because
Let's go.
it saved my dad from doing it.
Oh,
Yeah, well, I know people who paid money. Well, how did you think you got in? Goodness me.
Well, we're not the good people that paid money. We're just the bad people that paid money.
Of course, he said.
Yeah, of course, good
That's right.
people paid money, but
Good people paid.
there
I
were
didn't.
bad people who paid money as well.
I didn't get. How much did it cost to subject yourself to
I
that?
think it was like $37.50 for 2 tickets. So it wasn't cheap at all. And literally, it was. I have to say, it was $37.50 well spent.
I think it was. So can you just backtrack prior to that? That's lunchtime or whatever last Friday, and what made you think that you should do that? I mean, what was motivating you there?
Well, the idea was to confront Humza. I mean, this has been a long-standing plan, but the plan has evolved over time. So the initial idea was just to simply confront Humza. But then, like you mentioned earlier on that week, it was like divine intervention. He basically gave me full credence to swear at him and to sort of cast his own words back at him in the manner that I did by saying we should tell bigots to F off. So it was a divine intervention in that way. The lead up to it, yes, it was a bit nervous, but I mean, we just get through it. And I mean, it was crazy start to finish. The original plan was to heckle Humza and then on the way out, heckle the entire room. That was the original plan, was to call everybody in the room and say, how can you all listen to this madman, or something to the same effect. So it was basically me walking into the lion's den and antagonising the lions. That was what the plan was to begin with. Of course, we have to factor in, I had no idea how he was going to react, no idea how Ian Dale was going to react, no idea how the crowd was going to react. So we had a couple choice things to say, given the time that we'd had or didn't have, depending on if we get tackled by security and huckled out, But I think overall, the plan went, it was a resounding success. And I think overall, the comments have been, I mean, it's been an outpouring of support, if I'm honest. And I'm reading all the comments as they're coming up. And thank you so much for all your amazing comments. It's brilliant to see. But this is the damage that we can cause. I'm just a normal, ordinary member of the public. The damage that you can cause with just a camera phone and a voice is outstanding. It really is. And I think we've got Humza on the ropes now. We've got him absolutely on the ropes, beleaguered, and now he's struggling to sort of recover for that. So we've landed critical damage. See, Alan Dawes is saying, I'm amazed he didn't send the hate crime police. Well, technically, I'm just following the First Minister's guidance, guys. I've done nothing wrong. This is why it was divine intervention in the sort of days leading up. And I must issue one apology, and that's to Richard Lucas, the leader of the Scottish Family Party, because at the start of the week, I think it was Monday, me and Richard met, and I told him of the plan to confront Humza. And at the time, it was agreed between me and Richard that I wouldn't swear, I wouldn't stoop to his level. But given fast forward a few days, and he had said that, then I thought it was too good an opportunity to cast his words back at him. So there's one apology that is due, and that's to Richard Lucas, because I did agree with him not to swear. But given the whole context of the situation in its entirety, I felt it was entirely warranted, absolutely entirely warranted. But I would just encourage everyone to take inspiration for this, and that you can do the same. I was going to redonate any donations that I had received to the next person that done it, to the next person that catched Humza out. And then we can sort of start like an ever-growing prize for catching Humza out, or catching these politicians out, just in general. So a resounding success. It was a bit nervous, but I mean, you just get on with the job at hand, I suppose, Alistair.
Absolutely. I mean, I feel for you, because you had to sit through what, 35 minutes of listening to Humza Yusuf in conversation with Ian Dale, and I would find that very difficult to sit listening to that. I mean, how was that?
It was the longest half an hour, 40 minutes of my entire life, Alistair. Absolutely, it was horrendous. It was waiting for the perfect opportunity. If you listen back to the video, you can tell that it's on the back end of a joke that he's making about race again.
Yes,
of course.
Yes. Just to go into that, because when we played that video there, he's saying something. Just play the video, just the very first 10 seconds of what.
By usually, please don't take offence here, but usually by middle-aged, conservative white men.
Excuse me. It was the perfect opportunity to segue into the whole, because obviously my statement was regarding race anyway. So what he's saying there is basically, I think the video's cut off a tiny bit, but what he's saying, who's criticising you? Ian Dale's asking. Who's criticising you? Oh, it's middle-aged white men. And to my amazement, the whole crowd just starts applauding, as if it's there's a big sign flashing on the stage. Applaud now, applaud now. It was absolutely ridiculous.
Yes, absolutely, and not a good sign. It's like, oh, you can racialize politics that way, but no other way. I mean, we'd obviously prefer that politics were not racialized at all, but it's, he wants to do that. He wants to racialize it. He's got form for doing that. And but apparently he doesn't seem to realize, well, that could, you're playing with fire, basically.
He's a hardened identitarian, and he follows that diktat perfectly. And you've seen, this is the next thing we're going, is that Anas Sarwar has made an almost identical speech to Humza. And this is where we go. So this is why I'm facing incredible attacks from Labour as well. So Labour have come after me. Or if you think about it, on the unionist side of things, this should have been universally viewed as one for the good guys.
Oh, yeah.
Universally. Because, one, everybody benefits from Humza getting his arse kicked, basically. Everyone benefits for that. But why are some unionists coming after me? Because, I'm getting labelled far right. I'm getting labelled extremist. I think you've got an article ready to pull up that I'm described as some foul-mouthed extremist.
Pull that up.
It just gets... and to be honest, when I bought all the papers on Saturday morning, and I had read through all the papers on Friday after the fact, and, they were wrong about me in the first sentence often. They'd said I stood for the Scottish Family Party previously, which would have taken them 2 or 3 minutes to verify, which they didn't. The journalism in Scotland is absolutely dire. Absolutely dire. That we have to rely on citizen journalists, moreover. I just...
Oh, I think so, and that's definitely something that comes over, and it's one of the reasons why we here at Force for Good are trying to develop our platforms as much as we can on the limited resources that we have, including going on to Substack. I know you're also on Substack, but these are just ways to get the message out there, because if we leave it to the so-called legacy media, the mainstream media here in Scotland, they're not going to... they're not going to look kindly on us. That's interesting, though, what you say about coming under attack from Labour, because Anas Sarwar is very much... he's got his own terrible video as well,
Absolutely.
Which hasn't been getting promoted as much, but it's basically word for word, basically what Yusuf has been saying. So that would damage him as well if that was certainly to be promoted. So they're probably trying to do everything they can to say, oh no, this isn't racist, it's just like fair comment. Mm-hmm. Or it's not even racialist, it's just fair comment sort of thing.
why does Anis and Humza, within the space of a week or two, make the exact same speech? That's not a coincidence. This is identity politics being injected into our system. Something that Scots are universally opposed to. I think Scots, and I believe in the intellect of Scots to see past race. It's not about the colour of your skin. It's about it's your content, and your character. So, I believe Scots are like this. They're very welcoming, but for us to be turned on like this, it's unheard of, and it is totally wrong, and it must be called out at every turn. It must be.
Yeah. Well, you've certainly done that, and you've made a name for yourself in doing that, and these things. I mean, it's just going to get easier, as it were, for you from now on, because once you've made the plunge, as it were, then you realise that how effective it can be. And talking about effective, last time I looked, I think you had 516,000 views. This morning on Twitter. Now you've got, in addition to that, you've got 50,000 views on our TikTok account, because that's that video that you watched there. That's from our TikTok account, and that's got 50,000 views. And I've seen the video throughout YouTube and TikTok as well. So all in all, you have at least 600,000 views, at least, which is serious traction. And
prior to this, I didn't even post on TikTok. It's the first video that I've made that's went properly viral, whereas people are taking clips and uploading it to different, Facebook I'm not on, YouTube I'm not on really, but it's everywhere. You can't walk around without stepping on it. And even the best thing about it, Alistair, if I'm honest, is that people that I know personally for back in Cowdenbeath, where I grew up, working class people through and through. They were reading it in the papers, and they were seeing it as inspirational, and sending me support. So it's reaching the grassroots. I've managed to breach the echo chamber, so to speak, which is what we need to do. We need to reach the people that are actually, maybe they're tuned out to politics because it's too much. Maybe because we're obviously involved heavily, we're looking at every word everyone's saying almost on a daily basis, whereas people are just living their normal lives, trying to get through day to day, and these are the people we want to reach. So I'm happy for that.
Yeah, that's a good point about how an event like that can actually reach people who don't normally follow politics, because most people don't follow politics very, very deeply, and for them it's just the same old boring kind of arguments. But something that actually reaches them, stunts as it were, that reach them and make them realise that's funny, or that's correct, or that's brave, or that's unusual, or whatever, gets them thinking, gets them debating, gets them talking. Did you see that guy on TikTok who said whatever? So it's very good. It's very good that way, and so that's what you've done. You've really contributed actually to the Scottish political debate. Although I'd certainly advise Humza not to go about swearing, because when you do that, you give your opponents, as he has done, carte blanche, and then that just creates a kind of downward spiral. So hopefully you'll have learned from his lesson. Hopefully you'll have taught him what his casual foolishness can bring back to him, back down upon his head. So let's hope that he's learned his lesson there.
I think
in future will be more diplomatic and statesmanlike.
From now on, I think he'll be a bit more vigilant in the words that he uses, and very selective about the words that he uses. Although over the last, was it today or yesterday, he's saying that his policies will piss off a lot of people. That's what he said. That's his words again. Is this what you want for your First Minister, guys? Seriously? He's telling you he's going to piss you off? Like, are we living in a mad world here? Is this what we want? Come on. It's mind-blowing what this guy's coming out with. It really is.
Yes.
Scottish politics is like a dumpster a dumpster fire that's had oil poured over it. It's just overflowing at this point.
Well, talking about dumpster fires, that made me remember that back in 2014, maybe it's the week before the referendum, there was literally a dumpster fire. There was a big one of these great big wheelie bins that you have on the streets went on fire, and it went on fire beside, as it happens, I think it was a Scottish Nationalist shop or meeting place or something like that, and a photograph was taken that made it look like it was the SNP place that was on fire and not the actual dumpster. And we're like, I immediately saw that and I was like, that can't be right. Nobody's setting fire to any of that. And I actually, the next day, because it was here in Glasgow, I went out and I took pictures of it, and it was in fact just this big dumpster that had gone on fire. Somebody had put a traffic cone beside it and set the traffic cone alight, which had melted all the plastic, which had set the thing up. And I went into the shop next door, and the shop owner, I think it was over on the south side somewhere, shop owner goes, "Oh yeah, that was just on fire yesterday. Don't know what that was about." But it created a huge stir back then, as if other Unionists were going about torching places. And I just thought how easily misinformation can suddenly catch legs if at the right time. It's terrible.
Talking about misinformation, if you were to draw up this Daily Record article, I can point out some of the glaring flaws. I think it is that one that's got some errors. But effectively, there was a lot written about me that was just plain wrong.
Yes.
And really, what are the journalists doing? What is their job? Surely they have, what is it, journalistic integrity?
That's the phrase. Yeah. We'll bring it up. I thought it was ready to go there, but I see that it's not. But what advice would you give to people who are watching and who would like to do something like that?
Great question. So my advice to you is to overcome your initial fear of confronting a politician. You're going to get way more support than you think you are. And you'll be able to look your grandchildren and stuff in the eye as things are absolutely going to get worse under the SNP, and people across the land are going to be, what did you do? At least I'll be able to tell them I was confronting the First Minister at almost every turn, and this sort of stunt. This is all it takes. This is the damage you can cause. One man, one voice, one camera phone. And it is critical damage. We've got the First Minister of Scotland on the ropes. We've got him backtracking. So my advice to anyone, just go out and do it. You'll have way more support than you would ever imagine. And it'll embolden you. And it'll, more to the point, it'll inspire others to do the same. We need to, again, I'll keep going back to the speech, but you don't gain respect from being a star. You know, it's true respect and influence is earned by creating stars.
Yes.
So this is what it's about. We need to create the future stars of Scotland. And I can tell you they're in every village, in every town, in every city, waiting to be awoken and waiting to be inspired into action. So Humza Yousaf, heckled by a former candidate for the extremist Scottish Family Party. So straight away, Daily Record, the first sentence is wrong. Categorically wrong. I've never stood for the Scottish Family Party. I'm intending to stand for them in Rutherglen by-election, which this stunt was involved in that, and we've got a lot of stunts lined up in conjunction with this, but I've never stood for them before. But this is what you get from the journalists in Scotland. Andrew Quinn, who couldn't even take 2 or 3 minutes to verify which party I stood for. Couldn't even be bothered for a quick Google search.
Yeah,
you know?
I recall you did stand, but it was for George Galloway's party, wasn't it?
That's correct. It was. I like to view it as a mirror image of the Unionist side of Alba, whereas Alba were going for the list vote. They were saying vote SNP 1, and then on your list vote Alba, where they were going for like an independent supermajority. We wanted to take that mirror image on the other side. We've got Unionists. They can vote for the best placed person to beat the SNP in their own personal constituency, and then they could vote all for unity on the list to create a Unionist supermajority.
That's right.
That was the plan. And obviously all the journalists in Scotland hated that as well. You know, basically, I've uppercutted the machine, and the machine is coming after me. And this is the mechanism they're doing it is through the press by just it's plain lies.
Yes, and let me just read it here. You shouted out, "Excuse me, Humza, a few days ago you said we've all to call out bigots and say F you, did you not? Your white speech was the most bigoted thing Scotland has ever heard. So on behalf of Scotland, F you. You're a pestilence on the land. You're despicable. You should be behind bars," close quote. I think I've never seen that phrase, "you're a pestilence on the land," used in a political context outside of the Bible, I have to say. But well done for that soundbite, which was certainly a very original and new one.
That was not a rehearsed line. I had no idea I was going to say that. That just absolutely sprung into me. It was so.
It's the spirit. John Knox. The spirit of John Knox was acting through you there, I think. Yeah. So anything else you wanted to say about that particular?
I mean, the particular article. I mean, this is just an example of how bad our journalists are in Scotland. You know, it would have taken Andrew Quinn 5 minutes or less to confirm what he'd written in the article. You know, 5 minutes or less. I think that it's been edited online on the online versions of it, but in print, it hasn't been. But what I would say is that if I'm talking about the election coming forward and the Rutherglen and Hamilton West by-election, if we're going to win, and every political analyst in Scotland will tell you that there's no way you can go from zero to winning an election. It just is not possible. Well, it is if you're campaigning in a different manner like me. I'm calling it campaigning 2.0, where we're just going to do a series of stunts over and over and over again. I think I might even try to chase Patrick Harvey on a bike or something like that. You know what I mean?
Don't give too much away at this stage. But yeah.
We need some sort of action. The people are crying out for action. We've been absolutely destroyed. Our livelihoods are being taken away from us. Our freedoms are taken away with us. Our own First Minister is telling us that he's going to piss us off. We need action, and people respond to the action. It's different when you just make a wee video for the comfort of your home like we're doing right now, Alistair, but that's totally different, and you're not guilty of this yourself, but the keyboard warriors, we need to take those keyboard warriors and then add them into the flesh so that they can then aim their attack at someone in the flesh. You know what I mean? It's we need to take it off the digital sphere and then onto the street. You know.
Well, you're the man to do that, and I don't know if you do meet Humza, maybe you could give him a packet of these digestives. Digestives, white.
I think I would love them biscuits, by the way. I think I would. I love digestive biscuits, especially McVitie's digestives. Somebody said I was getting accused of putting up a Nazi salute there. That was, if you look at the video, come on. They'll try to label you with absolutely everything.
Pointing, for example, they'll try. But he was the. If we just get rid of the Twitter banner at the moment, we'll just put this up, and well, there you see the whole crowd now. How many people did that seat?
So auditorium? I think the theatre was in between 130, 150 at seat. So as you can see from the picture, it's very sparsely.
It's about
occupied.
A third full. I think there's around about 55 people there. Around about a third full in that case. So, it's not a particular. Well, it's very poor turnout actually. But
you would think a lot of people would like to hear the First Minister speak. You know, you would think that.
I think we hear him enough, quite frankly, on the television, and everything he's coming out with, it's just worse and worse. I mean, yesterday he had an article in The Guardian complaining about quote unquote toxic masculinity in Scotland. I don't know if you saw that, but I mean, that's really, that's all the usual buzzwords, all the usual phrases. Before you know it, toxic masculinity will be added to the hate speech crimes. Well, actually, I think misogyny, I think they want to add misogyny, however they may define that, to the Hate Crime Act. So nothing's going to get better under Humza, or indeed under the SNP, or indeed under the Greens. And so we need people like yourself to be doing what you're doing. And thank you so much for that. And we'll just run through how to contact you. We can contact you.
Best ways, I'm most active on Twitter. I am sort of trying to work out TikTok, whatever it is. Just sometimes I think I'm doing TikTok wrong. It's just a barrage of videos and information at TikTok. As soon as you open the app, it's attacking you straight away. So I'm trying to work my way through that. But
so you're at the moment you're on twitter.com/Niall Fraser 8. That's NIALLFRASER 8 for those of us who are listening on the podcast. You're on niallfraser8.substack.com. And for those who want to say congratulations and I'd love to buy that man a drink, you can at least buy him a coffee at ko-fi.com/Niall Fraser 8. That's ko-fi.com Niall Fraser 8.
Just make sure that it's not a flat white.
Yes, indeed. So on that happy note, let's draw this to a conclusion. I think we could talk all night, quite frankly, and maybe we need to look into doing a special program about that, and we'll certainly be keeping in touch with you during the Rutherglen and Hamilton by-election, which will be coming up sometime in October. So looking forward to that and wishing you the best of luck. And folk out there, please help, please support Niall, and please pray for him as well. And please help to buy him a coffee at ko-fi.com/Niall Fraser.
And if it's not a big deal if you can't, even if you just send a wee message of support, honestly, that goes just as much as giving me money. It really does. Sometimes I don't like asking for money at all, and that's why
other people have to do it on your behalf. Absolutely. So Alan says that was excellent. Niall, let's say good night and all the very best to you.
All right. Good night, Alistair. Pleasure as always, and thanks for all the great comments, guys. Have a great evening.
Take care. Great stuff. Niall Fraser. What a fantastic guest, and thank you for all those comments that you made. And now, we had a competition earlier. I said that on this day, 16th of August 1960, was the establishment of the sovereign base areas of Akrotiri and Dhekelia in which Mediterranean island? The answer, of course, was Cyprus. And the winner is Debbie. So Debbie will get the keyring and the RAF coffee heading her way. Brilliant stuff. Now, just before we leave, I want to make a quick mention of our Substack. We launched our Substack about 10 days ago. Substack is a way of trying to raise a wee buck for our organisation. Basically, it's to encourage people to become monthly union supporters. If you become a monthly supporter from £5 a month, which is to say £1.15 a month, then you'll get free access to our paid articles on Substack, in addition to the other rewards that you'll get, in addition to the badges, the magazines, the books, the flags, etc., that you can also get as a union supporter. We're going to gift every union supporter who wants it or who requests it a free paid subscription to our Substack to get all our articles, which will be behind the paywall, and that's worth an additional £3.50 a month to you, or £35 a year. So it's a way of encouraging people to become union supporters, which is to say monthly donors. So please do become a union supporter if you can, at forceforgood.uk/union-supporters. So valuable for us, so valuable for us. It's the only thing that really keeps us going, is our union supporters and our occasional one-off donors. And you can also subscribe to Substack and just get the free articles as well. You don't need to pay anything, you'll just get the free articles, but 80% of the articles on Substack are behind the paywall. And these articles on Substack will be available nowhere else online. And that will also help us in our constant effort to produce our next issue of Union Heart, which will be issue number 9, which will be called King and Country. And this was the last issue that we did, which was called Union of Crowns. So our Union Heart is on course, but at the moment we don't have the cash to publish it. So anything that folk can do just to help us out would be much appreciated. But folks, we're going to continue to keep the British end up. Whatever happens, we'll be out on the street at least once more this month, and in September we'll be out at least a couple of times. And so if you want to contact us to be with us, you know the email address, contact@aforceforgood.uk. So having said all that, folks, we're going to be taking next Wednesday off because we want to double down on research for the next issue of Union Heart. But we'll be back the week after that, and we'll be keeping you up to date with what's happening on the scene. I think this has been a great program tonight. I've really enjoyed it. It's gone on longer than we expected, so thank you everybody for viewing. It just remains for me to say, God bless the United Kingdom and God save the King. See you next time.